listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Arts Respond is a collaboration between WNHH and the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and today I am so happy to be here I think this is the first episode of Pride Month. Yes, it definitely is, because last Friday was not yet Pride Month, with Douglas Lyons, and we are talking about his and Ethan Pakshar's new musical, Beau, which is premiering off-Broadway this summer. It is premiering at 154 Christopher Street, so you might know that as formerly the New Ohio Theater. Previews start June 6th, which we're pre-recording right now, but if you're listening to this on Friday, June 6th, congratulations, it's in the future, and run through July 27th. And I'm just, Douglas, I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk about Beau, but I
Hmm.
also want to go in the Wayback Machine and talk about the fact that you are a son of New Haven. Um,
Very much so. I
yeah,
was born
yes,
in New Haven, Connecticut. I was raised
yes.
there for 17 years. I come home at least once or twice a year for my family. And I did everything. I played sports, I played soccer, basketball, tennis, I think that baseball. Yep, there was 5 years of that. I went to Helen Grant Elementary, Betsy Ross Arts Magnet. I graduated from Career High School, and then would go on to study musical theater for a BFA at the Hart School in Hartford. So
And I
I'm a
want
Connecticut boy.
Yeah, and I want to unpack some of that just a little bit further, because I think that I mean we know, right, that New Haven is the cultural capital of Connecticut, and even
Mhm.
next to a city like New York, where there is so much arts and culture like everywhere, right? New Haven, I think, punches well above its weight. It's a city of 18 square miles, 135,000 people, and yet we have such cultural vibrancy in the city. And so for you
Mm.
as a young artist, what were some of the things that helped light that spark?
So I grew up in church. My mother is currently the first woman pastor of Thomas Chapel over on White Street. And I I went to dancing school. I was teaching dance at 15 years old at the Ultimate Dance Experience. It's now maybe a different name, the Hampton Academy for Dance and Music. Leah Davila at 15 years old like plucked me and was like, "You're good at tap, teach." And I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." I was like a freshman or a sophomore in high school, but it gave me such skills to create. And I remember we had one dance recital where she let me stage the opening number as the Lion King. So I had people in like snake outfits like slithering across the so my creativity was always cultivated in that city in one way or another. And the national tours of Cats and Rent came through the Schubert New Haven. And that is one of the turning points in my life of understanding, oh, this could actually be a profession for me. I would join that same Rent tour 3 years later when I took a year off from the Hart School to swing the Rent tours of Benny Collins Swing. So New Haven has a lot. I mean, even the Freddie Fixer Parade, like
Yes, which just
there's
happened last Friday. I was, or not last Friday, last Sunday. I was thinking when you said Hampton Academy of Dance and Music,
yeah.
I spoke to two of the young ladies who are dance captains there, and
Uh-huh.
they brought it. They had such presence. So yeah, you're absolutely, I mean, that is like when you talk about the legacy of arts and culture in New Haven, and specifically in Black New Haven.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're getting it and you don't know you're getting it. At Helen Grant, the late Lily Perkins, she had the boys choir. So I first sang it at um Helen Grant, and I can't remember the name of the, I don't know if it was the Trinity or Unity Boys Choir, but I got so much exposure to art in New Haven, and I was getting training very early without really knowing that I would be using it later on. I mean, I even go back to, I tell this story sometimes, but my sophomore typewriting teacher, Miss Bess, we did not get along. because I thought it was stupid that I had to learn how to type without looking at the keyboard. I was like, when am I ever going to use this? I'm going to, maybe into sports or secondary mathematics education. And would you know the amount of scripts and emails I send on a daily thank you, Miss Bess? Because she taught me the proper way to type and I don't have to look down. So I get a lot of work done. Just a lot of tools I didn't know I would need. And not only artistically, but in leadership, you know. I remember my seventh grade science fair. So crazy. We mated a set of gerbils trying to guess what their offspring would look like based on their makeup, and we were right. We actually won. It's just like there's so many memories that come out of New Haven that just have afforded me and pushed me towards my creativity. So I'm immensely grateful, and also that it's not too far from the city as well.
Yeah, and also, so you're seeing these shows come through the Schubert, and also you played Tony, right? In West Side, which when we're talking about like iconic love stories,
Uh-huh.
West Side Story is one of them, right? I think that it's like it's canon.
Yeah, her name used to be Kristen Granfield, but she's been married since. But she came into my life my junior year at career, and she had transferred from a different district, and she started a theater program. And I was in my third year playing basketball, which I was not very good at. But they did Little Shop my junior year, and I would sit in on rehearsal, but I would not actually perform. I wasn't in the cast. She was like, "You can join the play." I was like, "No, no, no, no. I just want to watch." And I was teaching dance at Roberto Clemente after school, but I would just come and watch. And in my senior year, I was like, I really don't want to play basketball. My parents were like, you need to finish what you started. And I was like, ah. But I had booked Tony and West Side Story, but they had started rehearsals when we were still in the semifinals for the basketball team. And so the moment we lost, I was in rehearsal the next day and I played Tony at, 16 or 17, whatever. I think it was, no, it was 17. And it changed my life, because I felt that first real impact with an audience, and I put on way too much stage makeup and delivered the performance of a high school lifetime.
I actually think high school theater, like some people sleep on high school theater, and in New Haven, it's very good.
Yeah,
It is very good. Like Co-op just put on Into the Woods and it was very good. And I'm not just saying that as someone who like loves these children and believes in them. Um
yeah.
yeah, so and Hill House did Little Shop a couple years ago and it was fantastic. And so yeah, I mean I think high school students are constantly underestimated. And so and then they get to discover real things about themselves when they bring that to the stage. And it sounds like maybe baby Douglas or teenage Douglas had a moment where you really realize like, okay, basketball is maybe not my gospel. And this is something that not only am I genuinely very good at, but it has unlocked something within my heart.
That's the part. My senior year, I was singing the national anthem, the basketball games, and then playing the basketball games. And my senior year, my father, we had flirted with this idea of me auditioning because Ladora Hill, who was starting her own company, like talent company, signed me and was getting me appointments for things. And so in the middle of basketball season, I remember one day I like had to go shoot my comp card and we like had all my clothes and I like had to leave. And the guys were like, have it like people knew what was happening. But then midway through it, it just became too difficult to go back and forth with me being in sports and school. Um, but I got the bug. I got the bug real good, especially with West Side. And the Heart School was the only program I got into. And thank God I did because it literally changed my life and gave me all the tools to be a professional, not just actor, but artist, you know?
So I want to hop ahead and talk about Bo. Although like I don't know, I kind of believe that we are like as people, we are an amalgam of all of our experiences. And so
We
if you
are.
want to like hop back and be like, well, this actually really um but you premiered a show, Chicken and Biscuits, in 2021 at the Circle in the Square Theater on Broadway. But this, Bo, is your first musical debut. I'm correct in that, right? Yeah.
My first major musical. So I had a kid
Yeah.
show, Polka Dots, at the
Yes,
Atlantic Theater
of
Company
course. Of
in
course.
2018. But this is like full blown musical drama, actor, musician, storytelling, like a full score, hour and a half plus musical. And it's my debut as a book writer in New York because I've had plays debut in New York.
Yeah.
But as a book writer, it's my debut. So I'm really
So
excited for it.
I wanna talk about the musical itself as it comes to the stage, but I love talking about, sort of how the sausage gets made. And this is a queer coming of age show, and I think as any time to tell beautiful and meaningful queer stories on stage is very, very important. But right now, I would say it feels just like really urgent and very critical. And so tell me about the process of knowing that you wanted to bring this to fruition. Because I remember when we talked like back a couple of years ago, you were telling me about this project.
Yeah, so I had done the Rent National Tour. I took off a gap year between my sophomore and junior year, and doing Rent changed my life. It like tapped me into the possibility of my queerness and seeing the world through different eyes, performing this incredible musical around the country. And then when I was in the Book of Mormon on Broadway, once was also opening or had opened. And I went to the final dress of that show and I was like, this is magical, the way these actor musicians tell story through their instruments. Um, if ever I write something, I want it to be like that. So I call Bo a brainchild if Rent and Once had a queer baby. That's what Bo is. So in 2017, when I was backstage at Beautiful, we had already written Polka Dots. I was like, okay, I think I want to try script. I had never written script until Bo, and Bo actually came before Chicken and Biscuits and Table 17 and all these other things, but musicals just take a lot longer to get produced. That's just the way it goes. But I was fiddling around this idea of this actor musician piece where there's a band, and within the band there's a band leader. In this case, his name is Ace Baker. And I didn't know the story, but I knew I wanted all the actors who played all these instruments to have scene work, and at any moment with a light switch they would pop out and create a character and then snap back into the band. That I did know. Um, and I was blessed enough to get a residency at the director's company as a writer, and they were one of the first companies to give me an acting job in a reading when I graduated college in 2009. And I went to Leah Mikulis, the associate artistic director there, and I said, "Hey, I'm writing." She said, "Oh, I know. I see you on Facebook." And I was like, "Okay, I have this idea of the show." She was like, "I can't pay you, but I can give you space." And so I had the director's company Black Box as sort of my incubator for this new work. I would pull in actors with like 5 or 6 pages and just hear it because I was very afraid to fail. But over time, I like crafted this script of this kid, Ace Baker, who in the concert, it's the evening is the second album release of his band, and he's talking to you, and he's pulled a lot of these song lyrics from his middle school journal. And by singing these songs, it actually evokes and brings him back to his experience and finding himself as a queer kid, not having a father figure, being bullied, having a single mother, and then realizing at 12 years old that his mother's father is alive and she had lied to him all his life, and him for the next 5 years creating this relationship with this man that is a stranger who gave him music and legacy and love. Um, and so that sort of formed itself along the way. Our first reading was in 2018, April. 3 additional songs were added for the August reading, and then we were quickly thereafter offered a developmental production at the Adirondack Theater Festival, which we did in summer of 2019. And it was a major success, like sold out, and they had to add seats, and it was proof that there was something there. So that's a little journey into Bo. And right after that, Sony Masterworks gave us a beautiful deal to do a concept album that's been circulating for the past 6 years as well. So that's available on all the streaming platforms if you look up Bo World Premiere Recording.
And for you, how does it feel to finally bring this? Because it has been a long gestational process. to finally be bringing this to the stage?
Yeah, it is. I try not to get emotional about it, but sometimes, I mean, this particular story also, to your point about queer rights and how the LGBTQIA, community is being attacked right now by administration. This show at this time in the West Village at 154 Christopher at Out of the Box Theatrics is a perfect ordained time for us to arrive. There are some deep, dark moments. There are some moments where Ace Baker does not love himself, and contemplates maybe not being here anymore, which a lot of queer youth feel at times. And so it really digs. We're not just putting on like a flashy 42nd Street, it's, and no shade to Kinky Boots and Death Becomes Her, but it's not all like glitter. It's like, what is the journey when you feel like you maybe hate yourself and you don't deserve to live? And how do you find the love through music to endure? That is what Bo is about. So it's also, I call it a hug to queer kids now who feel like they like musical theater, but there's nothing bopping for them. And folks that are, I'm still reading things on socials of friends of mine being called slurs and stuff on trains. It's like it's still permeating our culture, and this show says, I see you, but I will not be oppressed by you. Um, I will burst, I will grow, I will bloom, despite what the world doesn't want me to do.
And I think it's also like you need both and, right? You need the flashy
Yes,
kinky boots and you need this.
yes.
I think it's did you go through a moment yourself, you were talking about how seeing Rent and then being in Rent unlocked something about your own queer identity for you. Um, did you go through a period where sometimes uh I guess do you see some of yourself in Ace?
There's some of myself in everybody I write.
Yeah.
There's literally, in every show I write, there is a Douglas inspired character.
I think that
Um,
would be really hard. If you're a writer, it's my mother-in-law is a writer and I see like little bits of her peek through every time. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of Ace in me. I mean, there have been some dark moments in my life where I have not thought I belonged here, straight up, where I was praying that my queerness would disappear. There are moments in high school where I was bullied, oddly enough, by other queer people. So yeah, it's all right there. And I think as a writer, you're always pulling from yourself because that's the best experience to share. Like that's the truth that's on the surface is the ability to pull from your own experience. There are characters in Chicken and Biscuits that are very much inspired by the personalities of the women in my family on both sides. But I'm also honoring them and how they are matriarchs and how they carry status and beauty and legacy in our family. And I think with Bo, I've definitely written my grandfather, especially my mother's father, as Bo, which is Ace Baker's grandfather in the show. Um, and I know he would be proud. My grandfather used to, I would spend a lot of summers between like 8 and 15 in Oriental, North Carolina, where my mother is from. And so a lot of the lyrics in Bo, like the dirt road that funnels directly to the front door, being buried a mile from the back door, those are all that's true to my family. So I'm sort of honoring my legacy through this musical as well.
And also like what are some of the musical traditions that sit I don't know, I think of them as like little people on your shoulders. Not to sound like crazy. But
No, you're fine.
that yeah, that pass through you, that come through you.
For sure. So this score, which is really cool, is we say if James Taylor and James Brown started a band, that is Bo.
Okay, excellent.
Um, yeah, like after doing Beautiful, I think I came a little more obsessed with folk music, Carole King, and that period. And then I grew up with Black music, right? And soul and rock and funk, like those were already in me. And so the score weaves sort of a very funkadelic sound for Bo, who's also a musician that you learn, in his past, You have your contemporary musical theater, sort of canon bops. You have your story songs. But then you have all these actor musicians who are playing. It's like the orchestra is on stage. So we have like mandolin and violin and bass guitar, electric guitar, acoustic, right? You have a drummer as well who's rocking out. So it's this clash of all these different musical styles. But I grew up on the Stevies and the James Taylors and the Arethas and the Gladys Knights, like there's so much musical influence. And we pay a little homage to Rosetta Tharpe, who's said to be one of the founders of what rock and roll became as well.
Um, yeah, I love that. And also like do you feel like New Haven comes through this as well?
I'm trying, it's more of a Southern story.
Yeah, it sounds like it,
Um,
especially with your
yeah,
grandfather. Yeah, which is
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. It takes place in Tennessee, in Nashville and Memphis. So I wouldn't say there's definitely a New Haven, drip drop in Chicken and Biscuits. The church and the funeral is in New Haven. And I have a new play I'm working on actually that right now I think is set in New Haven too. But yeah, I mean the love of what I got, the way I was raised in New Haven. And again, the dynamics are the things that I write, and that's my favorite part. And a lot of the sort of bite in both sides of my family have been written into these characters. So
I also want to talk about like what it is feeling like for you in this New York theater world right now. I feel like there's always drama in the New York theater. I mean, it's kind of like you joke in I was part of high school theater and we always joke like there's too much drama in the drama department, but I feel like New York is
Mhm.
like that, but times like 100 billion, right? There are politics that we on the outside don't see, and then there are
Mhm.
politics that we on the outside do see. And of course, like recently, I'm thinking about the fact that there was this essay in the New Yorker that became explosive with Patty Lupone, and but and other things. So how, in this moment, and I think then also theater makers, artists both behind the scenes and on stage are just they're feeling the moment. They're feeling this moment of trying to like you have a federal government that is veering towards authoritarianism that
Mhm.
is very much trying to silence artists. We're seeing that from the Kennedy Center to the loss of NEA funding at like little bitty theaters in rural Vermont where that might be the only theater for 100 miles.
Yeah, I mean, oh, it's heavy. And the one thing that we can control is what we put on the page and what we mount on the stage, right? And so the powers that be are trying very hard to erase voices because they know we speak truth to power. That's just how, systemic oppression happens. But in this particular week in the, New York theater scene, it's the Tony week. So the Tony Awards are this weekend. But because of Bo, I've like honestly not really been I like watched the nominations and was excited for my friends, and I was like, I got rehearsal. I'm focused here. Um, but it's I've written this before, and I actually had a really big response that went semi-viral about the whole Patty LuPone thing. Um, but I think the theater is at a crossroads of whether it wants to have integrity or it wants to be a capitalistic community. And I think both can be true. But I think we have to start naming the issues at full volume and not sliding behavior underneath the rug, just so that we can make money at the box office, right? Like culturally speaking, especially being a person of color in this industry, I have to navigate it differently. But I'm at a point that I no longer am willing to sacrifice my integrity just to advance. And I'm hoping that the American theater can go, you know what? That was out of line. And we're not just going to make a post about it, but we're going to second think maybe programming that actor at the center of our next season. Because until they come forward and do right by the community, if we really call this a community, there's some work to be done. And so we're tipping it in conversation, but I'm ready to see it in action.
Yeah, I think, do you also feel like the model of theater itself is at this like interesting inflection point? So I'm not only talking about like the people who are hired and what they're paid, although I think that's like a part that you have to talk about, but
Yeah.
also the like the model of American theater that worked 50 years ago or even 15 years ago, I think isn't specifically working in the same way.
Well, we sort of flipped and we're in a celebrity movement right now, which is both good and bad. It's exciting to have Denzel on Broadway and Jake Gyllenhaal, and the box office of those shows have been, astronomical, which is incredible. But what that does not do is crack it open for the new works. And so we're training audiences to only appreciate celebrity, and they're like, I'll pay $175 for the celebrity. But what is this? What is this new music? What? I know who's in it, right? They're asking that instead of what is it about? And so I think times have changed. And sadly, I think theater has a lot of work to do to catch up with how people are being engaged, what excites audiences. We still give so much power to critics, and we're not coming up with our own ways to reach out and do outreach to people so that people and word of mouth, that's how movies become popular. People are not opening, some people go to Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, but they're not opening the Times and reading about a movie. They're asking their friends, was the movie good or not? And they go see it. And I wish and I hope that we can get to a point where the artist and the collective is in control of what is said about the work and not just a stamp, of approval, because that stamp doesn't apply to everyone, and theater is not a monolith. And so I there's a lot of work to be done, and I know things now, like Little Red, that I didn't know before. When I was just an actor, I was like, "Oh, I'm booked. I'm here. I'm working. Everything's good." And as I stretch my arms in different directions in the industry, I'm realizing, oh, there's some oversight here. There's some power hungry folks here. There's lack of imagination here. And I'm so grateful to institutions like Out of the Box and MCC who did Table 17 for getting it and having outreach teams and community engagement to go, we're not just going to treat this like another slot. What do you specifically need to make this style of show successful? And I think that intentionality will be the change that'll unlock a new generation of theater goers.
I was gonna say, like, are you feeling it? Because again, like on the outside, it's hard to gauge, especially when you're outside. I feel like New York is this epicenter of theater. Um, are you feeling that sort of friction in real time? Because I think you're absolutely right that it's like it, and it's not just one system or one institution. It's so many of them. I mean, I think about the food critic at the New York Times who ultimately quit. But he quit because people freaked out after he started writing about like taco trucks in the Bronx. And people said, you can't do that because you're not writing about a place where I can get a 7 course meal and pay almost $1,000. And he was like, but I want to write about taco trucks.
Mm,
Um, and so this, I think what you're naming is like there are other systems that hopefully people are pressing on that also need to shift, like the New York Times, like the New Yorker, like the Washington Post, which is its own thing because of who it's owned by. Um, but I think you're right. And sometimes I'll see folks, like I do think we're in this age of like the rise of the TikTok reviewer. I don't know if that's a good thing, Douglas, but
I think it's perspective. And what I was just thinking about is take Jesse Green and place his review next to a TikToker. I actually think because then you're getting cross-pollination, right? You're getting a multi-generational response to the same piece, not just one point of view. And I yearn for that because what I learned is like all of my work does not compare to the Pulitzer things. That does not mean it doesn't deserve space. That does not mean it will not reach an audience, right? And what theater can be is a little snobby about what it deems as worthy. And if we go back culturally, that would keep a lot of folks of color out of the room. So systemically, you're already trying to like crack in to get that maybe one slot, but then within that slot, how is it going to be received or understood? And can people appreciate what you have done and what you're trying to do? Because we're not all trying to do the same thing. And that's what makes being an artist so exciting, but it has to be understood the intentions of the work and it has to be met at that level. You know, there are things on Broadway that are a feel good time. You know, Heart of Rock and Roll was a feel good time, and I really enjoyed it. You know, Tammy Faye, I loved it because they knew what story they wanted to tell. We just sometimes try to box people into what we think they should be telling, and if it's a certain level, and that's where theater gets boring because we miss out on a generation that might want a fun rom-com. You know, they might want to giggle at something silly. And in all other forms of media, I feel like you have those different genres and there's space for them. I don't see that space in theater all the time.
So I do want to get back to Bo, which is premiere previews are starting on June 6th, which is this Friday, if you're listening on June 6th, through July 27th at 154 Christopher Street in the West Village in New York during Pride
Yes.
Month. Happy Pride Month, y'all.
Happy Pride.
Yes. What are your, I always love to hear, like as a theater maker, as an actor, as an artist, and like a human in this in this crazy moment, what are your big dreamy dreams for, for this show, but also beyond this show?
I I said to maybe my therapist, I don't want to be famous, but I would like to be paid so I can continue to do the work that I want to put in the world. That's where I live. I also want the work that I put into the world to actually have impact for community. So Chicken and Biscuits had a short-lived run on Broadway because of Omicron and other things. Like just a different time, you had to show your, vaccine card to get in, right? We're not having to do that. So that affects obviously an audience. But that show went on to be the second most produced play in the country in 22, 23. And to fly around the country and see young girls stepping on stage for the first time to play Latrice and their mothers crying when they come off the stage door because they're meeting the playwright. That is God's work. That is the work I want to be doing. And so my hope for Bo and everything else I work on is that it will go to places where it will change hearts and minds and it will hold people and it will save lives. And hopefully, I will be paid along the way so I can survive and keep doing it. But I'm really about impact and not trying to impress people. Um, it would be the dream for Bo to go to Broadway. That would be awesome. But if it doesn't, let's take it to London and Toronto. Let's take it to the Midwest where there are queer kids hiding in their closets. Let's bring them out. Like that is my mentality. That's my intention with this work. Is not just about the celebrity and the fame and the lore of the industry, but the impact it can make on human hearts. That's where I live. So, yeah.
And also you mentioned that you're working on a new play.
I have a couple new plays.
Yeah.
It's really early and the title will probably change, so I shouldn't even say it, but it's called Extra Sprinkles. It's about parent care. So that's like 30 pages in. And then I have a new queer play about a 10-year anniversary party for a couple that goes awry, called Pure Glitter, that is actually getting two regional productions at the Second Generation Theater in Buffalo and Uptown Players in Dallas, Texas. And Nathan Lee Graham, who's currently on Mid-Century Modern, is attached to that. So yeah, I'm out here working and you always want to have the next thing ready in the back pocket. So there's a lot of exciting things coming up, some of which I can't even discuss yet.
Great. I love that. We
Yeah.
love secrets. So I also want to ask, I love asking artists, how in this moment are you taking care of yourself?
Therapy is a wonder. Um, I've sliced down the amount of work I am doing. I have kind of like I'm in production and I go straight into a workshop through the end of June. I have a vacation with friends planned the second week of July. I just got an email yesterday to do a TV pitch, and I'm saying no, I am not doing it because I'll be on vacation. And I actually have to create some barriers for myself, or I will work through the entire year and be exhausted. So I take care of myself with some boundaries. I go to bingo every Tuesday at Queen Astoria, which I love because it's my little outing and I've won quite a bit. So it's like the little things, checking in, on friends. I'm going to a surprise baby shower of a friend who actually I grew up with in New Haven on Sunday. She won't hear this, so it's fine. Uh, uh, so like balancing life with the work is the key to survival for me. Um, because this industry will drive you crazy. Like if you just focus on it, it like makes no sense. And the reasons that things pan out or don't are not in your hands. And if you try to invest too much of yourself into it, it will break you. And so I'm very protective and love. My partner Jamie and I are, we like find times and ways to carve out. There are limits. There are times where I have to put the computer down. Um, and yeah, intentionally creating that balance is important.
Yeah, and was that something that you found that you had to work on? Because I find that especially for working artists, um, you're cobbling constantly. Like artists are sewing things together to make a life out of it. And the boundaries, I mean, whatever, people work crazy amounts of time in every career I find, especially now that email has us like on there 24/7. Um, but I find especially in the arts, time and boundaries become very porous. And so you really
Mm.
have to guard your peace or it all goes out the window.
Yeah, I've learned the power of saying no, and not to be rude, but just like to protect myself. And I used to be the busy bee that ran around and did everything and showed up for everybody and brought everyone. And now I'm also at a different level than I was 5 years ago. The phone rings differently and things pop up, and I have to be available and ready. And I'm also balancing. One of my goals this year is to do more TV film, but my writing has been so crazy that I haven't really had time. So. I I am intentional about what I do, what I feel like I have energy for. And I am in control of that in a really beautiful way. So yeah, it's a bit of like preparation where it's like get through June, do not take anything for the first 2 weeks of July. Something will pop up that you'll have to do, but don't plan that now. So because I want to have the summer, I want to enjoy the seasons. I'll be going to Los Angeles for 5 or 6 weeks in the fall because the Geffen is doing Table 17. So I'll also be like LA is just a different pace than New York. That's the other thing. New York just has a very quick nature. It's very tight. Um, and LA, the pace is just different because you can get in your car and sing to yourself and be in traffic, but you're not around people. So I've been doing the bi-coastal thing this year, and that's also been nice for my mindset.
Oh, I'm so glad. So before we go, I just want to remind listeners that you've been here listening to us on Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I'm here today with theater maker, artist, playwright, librettist, composer, all the things, Renaissance man, truly, Douglas Lyons, and son of New Haven. Importantly for this show, where we love New Haven and all of its people, past, present, and future. So if you haven't been listening, please go back and listen. It's been a great interview. Douglas Lyons and Ethan Pakshar's new musical, Beau, is premiering off Broadway. So previews begin Friday, June 6th, which is really, really, really exciting, and previews and performances run through July 27th at 154 Christopher Street in the West Village. Douglas, before you go, I would love for folks to know both how they can easily find you. I follow you on Instagram. I enjoy your posts very, very much.
Thank
Um,
you.
Everyone should follow you on Instagram. Um, and also how folks can support you, especially if New Haveners are hearing this and they think, oh my gosh, this is like a son of New Haven who is making it and who's going to inspire. Like I am sure right now, hopefully, there is a young queer kid who will hear this interview with you and think, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And
Mm,
I can do it. And
mm.
I'm gonna be okay. I'm going to be like, the world maybe feels really difficult right now, and it's going to be,
Yeah,
and I'm going to push through.
for sure. I'm Douglas Sings on Twitter or X, whatever. I am Chocolate Hipster on Instagram. My website is douglaslyons.net. You can reach out that way. There's sheet music from Bo and other shows there. There is the Sony Masterworks recording of the world premiere of Bo, so you can check that out. And yeah, I mean, I love my roots. I love being from New Haven. I think something I learned is that, a lot of energy is given to a lot of kids in high school with sports, but not as much the arts. And I'm living proof that you can come out of New Haven, Connecticut and be an artist. It is
That's right.
so possible. It is so tangible. And it makes me proud. It makes me proud to go back home and get on that Metro North, and my parents pick me up and go to Sandra's Soul Food every now and again, and there are roots that informed my tenacity, honestly. We were taught, especially at career, to go and get and fight for what we want. And I bring that and I carry that with me every day in my work now. So New Haven forever.
New Haven forever. Thank you so much, Douglas Lyons, for making the time to join us during, like, right before previews, which is, I'm amazed that you look so like calm and collected in this moment. That is not how I would be. So I'm just
I'm a
so
good
happy to
actor.
see you. I'm
I'm
so
a decent
happy to see you
actor.
here. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you, and have a beautiful, beautiful first night of previews on Friday, June 6th.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.